Video 2. Get your files and data ready.
First step in our project is going to be to collect and organize the information that we need to complete our project. So that information can broadly be broken down into two categories. The spatial data we want to consider and template and system files. Now, spatial data that we can consider, the first item that comes to mind is we need some kind of data set to create a topographic surface from. So in this case we're going to use LiDAR data, and I have all the tiles that I expect to use in my LAS folder. So we'll bring those in and we'll model our tin off of that. But there's information aside from just topographic information that I'd like to consider. So in this case I've already collected that spatial information and I have it just easily accessible, so I know where my lakes are, my property boundaries are, and my turbines are. Now we don't just work with shapefiles either, we work with a plethora of different formats, including DWG, DXF, DGN, KML, etc. So we've got our spatial data set aside. The next category is our template and systems files. And this may require very little or no work. So one nice thing about the software is that you can set your system settings to reflect your design standards. So for this example, if I have a cross-section geometry that I'd like to use over and over again, I can save my TPL file, which carries that cross-section geometry with it. And if I save it as my normal.tpl in the default directory for it, that will appear when I open the software. Now similar, we can do that with other things aside from just cross-section geometry to control things like design standards for curvature, widening, super elevation, book layouts for producing those formatted drawing sets, etc. So if you've already worked through a similar project before, it may be just as simple as opening the software and running with it. If you haven't set those default settings before, but you've done a similar project, well, you can open up that previous project and save out those files that you'd like to use on your new one, or set your system settings to reflect the previous project, and very little work to do that. And if you're starting entirely from scratch, it's not the end of the world. Pulling all this information together and getting it set up isn't that time consuming, but it's one of those things that once we've done it once, why would we want to have to do it again? So once you've done it that first time, make sure you save it so you can use it again. Now one exception that I have in my list here is that my pads DWG. So here is a project-specific file that I plan to use, and for this I have my pads at my turbine site. I'm using a standard pad geometry as my starting point, and rather than defining that every time, I've saved out the line work for that so I can reuse it from project to project and just move it into place. And how we implement that in the software will make sense as we go through those steps.